Welcome to the Community ROI podcast. Here, senior community experts, founders, and C-level managers tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about how a community impacts business growth. By listening to these conversations, you'll get actionable steps on how to connect community goals with business goals to skyrocket business growth while still bringing extreme value to community members. My name is Yurii. I help people and brands shine through communities and personal connections. And my guest is Esther Trapadoux, a B2B growth marketer turned community builder from leading community at Amplitude to now heading it at Zed Industries, who loves truth, data, and people who dig deep for real answers, and who is on a mission to make community a core growth engine, not just a side project. So welcome, Esther.
Hi, that was a great intro. I don't know if I wrote that somewhere or you got that, but I was like, that's perfect. You nailed it.
Yeah, it's part of that you wrote, of course. I
Okay.
just found everything accessible on your social media or somewhere around it. So it's you. Yeah, exactly. And shout out
Awesome.
to Brian Kling for connecting us. And I'm super happy to have this conversation with you. So let's start with the first question. So, what's your definition of a community for business?
Um, I, I mean, it's a great question. I actually really struggled with that one. I don't have a definition for a vendor-led community. It's to me a community that the like idea of it comes from the vendor, which is always a weird way to start a community. Like normally it should start with the people. And when a vendor thinks that they want a community, the biggest question they have to answer, does this community need to exist? Do people really want it? And I think maybe the best way to get that answer is by starting with the group of people that who most want value from you, and that's going to be your customers and your users. So for me, the definition of a vendor-led community, which I still don't feel like I have, is one that serves its users first and thinks really deeply about like what users are getting stuck with, whether it's on their side or on the product side or and whatever it is that the vendor is offering. Like the community serves as a bridge between the thing that the vendor is selling. In my case, I've only worked on product companies, and then the users themselves. And that's the definition for me, is that bridge. And then from there you can make it, you know, whatever you want it to be, whether it becomes like more of a marketing engine or a brand engine and things like that. But if you don't start with your core, which is, for a vendor, it's going to be your users, then you haven't really hit it yet.
I feel like the more companies hear the word community, the more vendors hear about it, the more they think they need it. But I still believe that not everyone needs a community. I'm curious from your experience, what vendor doesn't need a community?
Oh, I don't know. Probably most of them. It depends on your motives, right? So if your motives are on the side of, some sort of revenue goal, and so you can pretend, a revenue goal is like not there. But if your things start to look like marketing, then you probably have somewhere in the back of your mind a revenue goal. And then I guess and I guess everything ends up being a revenue goal, because if you think about a user community, it's retention, and all the steps along the way to get there, and retention is revenue. But the companies who shouldn't have a community, I think it's partly, what is working in terms of growth, and will a community be a really good partner to that? Will you be able to differentiate that? Like, what's the problem you're trying to solve for? And then will like relationships, and sharing and knowledge sharing like be the answer to that problem that you have? And um, I think the bigger question is, why are you starting that community? And if it's very self-serving, and if you're not prepared to give a lot before making your first ask from your members, then you may not be ready to have the community that is going to last for a while and like be able to sustain itself.
So, if we are talking about a vendor community, what's your definition of a community goal?
A community goal. Um, this is This is a hard question as well. When we say like a community goal, there's a 0 to 1. We want to build a community, and maybe that's the question. That's when people ask this question the most potentially. It's like, oh, what does good look like, and what should I measure? Or are we talking about, and this is where I think things get confusing, a mature community? Because usually when you're starting a community, you're like, what's out there and what's great? And then you look at a community like Salesforce Trailblazers or something like that. And you're like, this is amazing. I'm going to build all of these things. But what you're seeing is a mature community, like probably 2 decades old. And you can't really replicate those things because it doesn't come back to, what your users want and what your core members want. You're just copying and pasting a bunch of ideas that seem cool from a successful community. So you have to kind of take it back to like, who are you really building for? What are their needs? Talk to all of them if they let you talk to them, and figure out like what are the gaps between your product, and the job that your product's supposed to do, and what the members are trying to accomplish in their day-to-day, probably professional lives, right? If it's a B2B vendor community. And then you start there, and your goals shouldn't be like really lagging revenue things. They might be like community health metrics, just classic demand ones that feel like vanity metrics for now, but you're probably looking at like, size of community, rate of growth. Are you getting the right people? Are they coming back? Like really early retention metrics. They did a thing. Did they do the next thing? Start to map out a little journey. And like think about your community as a product. So they went to like a meetup. Like what was the thing they're supposed to do after that to really become a more and more engaged community member? And the numbers aren't going to feel huge. And that's why I hate like metrics goals to begin with, because like everything is throwing off your metrics, right? Like you can have a great thing and then it spikes and it feels like such a win, but it's nothing. So I would say like your goals are going to come back to like how many community members do you know? Are things growing in a healthy rate? Are people coming back? And like, are you gathering feedback from them? And does that feedback sound like, things that other people might like if you were to get more people like them? If that makes sense. So it's pretty humble in terms of goals. This is assuming you're like going from
Yeah,
zero.
I feel like it's the hardest part sometimes when you are building community for business, and business usually have business goals. And sometimes people think that, oh, we should build community just to make people feel good. Yes, and you also have to some kind connect this business goals with community goals, because otherwise no one will just pay you to be a good person. No one will just pay you money. No one will just invest in a community just to make others feel good. You always have to have some kind of a community goal that connected with business goal. So basically that's what I'm trying to kind of like find here. And I'm curious from your perspective, since you are building vendor communities, what is one goal of the community that you are working with at the moment or worked before that inspires you personally the most?
Um, this goal question. It's like I like the question, but I think it's like too easy of an answer. So I'm just gonna like just caveat with that, because like if you don't make your goals your own and you like copy paste something from a blog post or a podcast that you watch, then you might be missing on like the real core. So before I answer that question, like the hardest thing about a community is it's competing with everything, right? Like it's competing with the attention that everybody wants to give to something else, their work, their personal lives, social media, whatever it is. So, like, you have to remember your community is a product, it's competing with everything, and it is as easy to leave as it is to join. And so, if you don't nail it within that first 30 seconds or so, then you've lost them and they won't come back because there's no good reason. And so, that's what I'm saying is like, you have to really get the value that you're driving to your core members, and it has to be super differentiated. And for a vendor community, I'll give you two examples. So Amplitude is an analytics product, and it attracts a really wide range of people. You can be an analyst or you can be a non-analyst. So you're like a marketer or a product person, maybe you love data, but you're not an analyst. And because of that, we had an interesting problem when I was there. We had an interesting problem of like getting people through the hardest part of the learning curve, right? You're like, okay, I'm not an analyst. I'm going to use an analytics platform. And okay, things are like really messy. Why don't the numbers look the same? You like run into all these issues, and it's very easy to want to give up because that's not your full-time job. Like your full-time job is a marketer, or you're a product person, or you're, a dev. And what we try to do in the community is like really focus in on like that new user moment, that beginning Amplitude user moment, because we know if you don't nail that, there is no hope for retention later. And then it becomes a really tricky conversation because Amplitude is a team product, right? And the way we sell it. So like we have to have really strong adoption in order to have a strong renewal. So if that's your business model, and like you've got this like funny problem where like there are a lot of things you can do in the product for new users where you're giving them handholds and tutorials and onboarding, but it's not quite nailing it. Or like you've just got this really broad range of users using the semi-technical product, then like community does a really excellent job of filling that gap because what community is like just pure use case after use case. I do this. I solved it this way. I'm also a marketer. Have you tried this before? This is my goal. I'm working on something like you. And community is a really beautiful way to do that. And you don't have to step in and be in the middle of that. And it doesn't look like some sort of documentation or new user onboarding guide. At Zed, it's quite different. So Zed is a code editor, and it's like an interesting one because the people that we tend to attract are ones who are one, they have an opinion about the editor that they use. So like I'm by no means an expert on developers. I'm not a developer, so I'm just learning a ton right now. I'm only like 3 months at Zed. And not every developer has an opinion or gets to have an opinion on the editor that they use, right? And some have been using the same one for a long time, and it's really hard to switch and for good reason. So Zed has this interesting group of users where they're passionate about the editor that they use. They're really opinionated and looking for something very specific and what they want, right? They're like, I'm going to try a bunch of them and find the one that I want and be really, really vocal about like my opinions for everything that I try. But I think the really cool thing about Zed is it's an open source product. And this is probably right now my biggest love right now in community. And I didn't know that I would fall in love with open source so greatly. And we're really thinking a lot about like why is open source so powerful, and why is it really powerful like to a specific type of developer, maybe all of them to a certain extent. And you're like thinking about like where does work get created, who owns work, who gets to shape a product, and like where is your voice heard in that product and also to the team that's maintaining that product and moving it into a certain direction. And like it's so amazing to see how many walls do not exist between a user and the product team. And if you look at most, closed source products, there are only walls. There's a form, there's maybe like a mass email, whatever, generic email that you can get to. There's maybe a ticketing system. Like you never really get a human, let alone, you know, ever get to influence the product. And then with Zed, an open source product with a bunch of users who are crazy passionate about an editor itself, let alone Zed, being able to ship things that are inside the product directly becomes a really fast, super dynamic, just kind of, the intensity level is notched up like 10x, 20x if you think about like regular SaaS vendors and how slowly they move and how little they hear from their user. And so the goal there, right, if it's open source, is like one, understanding who your best champions are, like who's merging PRs, who's like finding really good issues, like spending a lot of time in GitHub, and getting to know them really well, and then also in Discord, like who's just really like got a really good sense, and like intuition about like the product itself and what are we missing, and then celebrating them. And then on the flip side, like encouraging new contributors to get started and get over imposter syndrome, and like making it really safe and easy for them to start contributing and like building more in Zed, because Zed's not just for the most advanced users that have been using Zed forever, right? Zed's also for somebody who's like looking for something more and trying to see what's out there and wants to be a part of the journey.
How do you encourage these new contributors to contribute? I mean, like, because when you have some ambassadors and they've been doing it forever, I know it's
Yeah.
hard to switch from one editor to another, and you stick to one and you are like become an ambassador and you tell every
Yeah.
friend to about it. But if you are using, for example, another code editor and then they joined that community and they wanted to try it, how do you encourage them to be vocal?
Yeah. I mean, the demand is already there, I think. So it's not like there, I mean, if you have a problem where you're like, I don't know if anyone wants to contribute, then that's a very different problem. And luckily, we don't have that problem. That we have a lot of opinionated people who luckily, know some Rust. Like Zed is built completely in Rust. So we have opinionated users who like know some Rust and like how to get them started. It's a good question. And I've been like talking to a bunch of people who have had like good suggestions or good issues, and I reach out and I'm like, hey, are you interested in creating a PR? And there's like, there's a bit, like you pointed out, right? There's a bit of hesitation, maybe some imposter syndrome, and like feeling like, oh, like I don't know if I could do it. So we actually launched something, about a few weeks ago, and we've been like kind of prepping for it. And so Zed Zed has some Git features that don't exist, right? And people, if you just spend like 10 minutes on our X feed, like you'll see that this is just something that people complain about all the time. Like, why don't you have Git, like Git graph and like all of these things? And so right now we have like some of our best engineers working on shipping the Git features and like fixing the buggy Git features that like people have been asking for. And we started that in like the beginning of November, and they're going to go on through the end of December, right? And so the team was thinking like, oh, we know this is really like heated. People really want specific features, so there's a lot of energy around it. How do we like transform that energy into something really productive? And like what we did was we launched a program and it's ongoing right now. It's called Let's Get Together. And what we did was we just have a series of things that make it easy. Like when we have in GitHub, we have a Git project board where like we've curated a list of issues that are good for the community to answer. And like that might mean like stuff that's like easy to tackle. So it's a really good first issue. Once you get your first merge, I noticed there's like this high that people tend to ride and they're really excited, like, oh my God, I like got my first PR merge, I'm in the product. So those are good first issues for them. There are also issues that don't have a lot of like gnarly dependencies. And those are the ones that our team should be working on and like trying to ship really quickly, like across like all the different strengths of the team, including a designer. So the issues there are ones where we're like, you are set up for success if you are a Zed user, potentially relatively new to contributing or more advanced, and there's like a good range of issues that you can work on without having to like wait for our team all the time. That's a good issue, right? And then we had this like cute name, right? Let's Get Together. And then we also time bound it because it's like kind of not fun if you're like, well, this is exciting at first, but like how long is this going to take? I can't work on it forever. I have a job or I'm going to school, I have a life. So we were like, for the next 8 weeks, you and some of the best and most passionate developers we have at Zed will work together to ship the Git features that everyone's been asking for. 8 weeks, that's it, through the end of the year. We offer pairing sessions. So like that's a huge thing with Zed is you can like pair with one of our developers and then you jump into the code together, get like your questions answered. And that's actually really helpful because it's really safe. Our developers are really used to pairing all the time with each other and our contributors. So that I think helps get over some of that early imposter syndrome because you're working through some of the harder questions in like a more closed environment. And then we also have bi-weekly demo days. The first one is this Friday. And we want to celebrate like the stuff that people are working on and like we should be doing it together, right? So like our team will demo what we've been shipping and we'll have some contributors demo what they've shipped. And there are a number of ways that we're like, celebrating every single moment. If you're like grabbed an issue, super exciting, we celebrate you in GitHub and also our release notes. Same with like if you've shipped something, we'll put you in our release notes and like you're in GitHub. Anywhere that we feel like it's a public surface, like we want to acknowledge the fact that like you have a life and you have decided to spend some of your time to help ship some really cool Git features inside for like the rest of our user base to benefit from. And like we're super grateful for that. So we're really working really hard to like, you know, make them feel really good, create a safe space, give them issues that are good and like sets them up for success. And then celebrates them like both like being able to show off what you've done and then also get your name posted somewhere.
As you've mentioned, people have lives, and community is always competing with family, dogs, cats,
Yeah.
pets, Netflix, books, Spotify, whatever, you name it. So it's like always choosing, like, should I go there? Should I go there? Especially when we are talking about open sources, it's kind of like you are putting your time into something and you don't know like if it will be valuable for people. You are just doing it. And I'm curious, like from your perspective, as you are talking to the community members, like what's in it for them, what motivates them to contribute to open source?
Well, I don't know about other open source products, and I think like I mean it's a good question. I feel like every group is different, right? So like Amplitude, it was a bunch of like it was analysts or like maybe marketers or product people, and like what's in it for them looked very different for what's in it for developers using an open source code editor. And like talking to your users is really important and your members is really important to figure that out. Like I want to like just keep continue repeating that. Like you at Amplitude, I talked to over 500 users. Like you have to just continually talk to them. And there's never a moment where you feel like you've learned it all. It just like people's use cases and how they're using your product is like so varied. Um, and so with Zed and the users that we have, what's in it for them, I almost think like, and maybe because the community program is still new, and so what you get are the easiest to convince. There is no convincing necessary. There's just creating a space that had been missing. And they've been like wanting to go faster in their contributions or have bigger impact in their contributions. So let's get together. Part of it is like you can go to our GitHub repo, you can see all the issues on the board, or you can see all the issues in our repo and be like, okay, that's a lot. But then you can join Let's Get Together and there'll be more, right? And you'll be like, okay, I'm going to have a lot of impact if I spend time on one of these issues because this is a major effort and it's been really high demand. And I think if you're the type of person who contributes to open source, there's a lot in it for you already, right? Like you love to do it first. You really enjoy doing it. When I talk to users who are contributing, they're like, I can't wait to get started. This is like fun. And it's, a really like valuable way for them to spend their time. And they want Zed to be better because they use this product as like on the daily driver. And then the other side of it is like giving them the support. So it's less like, oh, I'm going to get a new job out of it or whatever. Like it's a good way for them to practice and refine their skills and like maybe spend more time coding in Rust. But like for me, it's just this sense of like taking care of them because they're already doing it or they already had the motivation to do it. And so we want to like celebrate them, recognize them, point them in the direction where they know that their work is going to have higher impact. Like, let's get together, things like that. And it's less like creating incentives, like there's this thing that I really hate in the community world. And like maybe one day we're going to end up doing it, but I'm going to like try to avoid it as much as possible is this kind of like points system and badges and things like that. One necessary because responsibilities are different. Like if you're a mod, then like that's the badge, right? Like you have a different set of responsibilities and abilities, right? But I hate like these little badges and stuff because I feel like it kind of treats people like dogs a little bit. I'm gonna be like really weird about that. But I'm like, what is this? Like you do a thing and I give you a treat, and you do a thing and I give you a treat. Like if the motivation's not there and you need a treat to do a thing, then you haven't created the right like things for people to work on or for people to engage in. And maybe people don't really want your community. Like maybe that's what it is. So that's my thing is like I don't really like this kinds of points and like badging systems unless you really, really need it for some reason. Like you have like, a million members and you just need to organize people.
I feel like at some point it becomes as carrot and stick. So sometimes it feels more like work, not as contribution or a community. And sometimes if it feels like work, of course, you need to get paid. Or why would you do that? Because otherwise, it's not always the case that people are ready to just volunteer their time and especially
Yeah.
their lives, into
Yeah.
doing something.
I think you're right. If there's no like inherent win already there, then it's really hard to sustain this flywheel, right? Like you're always gonna have to manufacture rewards and
You also told that there are less walls or practically no walls between like product team and community members. And I'm curious, are developers of that the members of the community itself? And do they see all their feedback and stuff that can improve the product in the community? Or are you still the person who brings feedback to them?
I mean, it's like it's a bit of both, but like so our no, that's not even true. Like and at Zed, like we're a small team and like if you think about it, like the context here is it's still like probably 90% developers at Zed right now. And like most developers don't get to work on the products they actually use or really love. So most developers work on like lame SaaS products or weird fintech product. You know what I mean? Like things where they're just like, I have to work on this thing and I'm going to ship this thing. And like they're probably really good at it and there's fun problems to solve. But in their heart, they're not building for them. And like Zen is kind of different because they are building for them. So that's why I think we're still small and have been small for so long because the passion is like a force multiplier. The ability to be like just have this direct empathy for your user because you are the user is a force multiplier. This is like the beauty of dev tools. Because the developers are like, I don't care what you have to say, marketer, and what you're hearing about our competition. That's a stupid feature. Nobody wants it. Like, this is what people want. Like the developers that our developers are always in Discord, the ones who like Discord, right? Not everybody likes Discord. They're in there a lot. They're like, I can see they're genuinely enjoying the interactions. We've tried to like organize ours where there's like a bunch of channels where you're like, you're a user, you're stuck, and we're going to get you the help you need. And like, I'm working on like getting a lot more just dedicated resourcing because like we need to unstuck the users. But then there are a lot of discussion channels that are topical, and I think our devs spend more time in there because they're really learning, they're exchanging. It feels very peer to peer. It doesn't feel like I'm a product team and I'm scared of what you have to say because I'm going to tell you it's on the 2027 roadmap, right? Like it doesn't work like that with Zed. Same thing in GitHub. There's a lot of really like fair, I wouldn't say flat exchange. It's never going to be flat because like we are a team, we get paid, and that's our job is to build Zed. And like on top of that, the Zed team has a really strong point of view. And it's not going to be like we're going to ship all the features that you want because we want users to love us. It's more like we have a very strong point of view of what coding should look like, what really high level collaboration looks like, and like we're gonna like march towards that goal because we think this is how teams should operate. And I think that's part of the beauty of having a team like Zed is like they're trying to raise the bar and they're trying to offer a platform that allows all of us to raise the bar and like have the space to operate that way as well. So to answer your question, like, what are the walls? Like, I think it's both. Like, be in there. They're in there, they're talking to users like their peers, like getting feedback, learning from them all the time, working on things with them and pairing, but at the same time, having like a very strong point of view about the product and how people like should have a relationship with their code editor and what they want it to look like.
As a community builder in a small team, how many hats do you wear and what are those hats?
How many hats do I wear? I guess I wear like, I don't know. It's such a weird question. I think I can tell you what I work on. So there's like celebrating champions because they're doing good work and they're really like helping us like move faster and like pushing us out of our comfort zone. Helping like the product team, right? Like if there's an initiative like shipping Git features, like helping them get like leverage the open source community and like funnel the energy that's already there into like our singular goal so that we're working together, the open source community and also our team. Like we have a shared goal that's really important. Um, I just launched meetups, and so I'm like the event organizer, host, like, that kind of thing. And that's actually also, I think, really important when you launch something is you have to bring like more energy than you thought possible because everyone there is like the first. And that's always scary and it's really awkward. And so if you're the one putting yourself out there and being like, I'm going to be the first to do all of these things and make everything else easy, then like that's like the main job, right, of any community person is just like continually put yourself out there. Like rejection is just like fuel towards like getting to your goal. And then you keep testing and testing and testing. And so like I'm doing event stuff, putting it out there, seeing if there's demand. We launched office hours. So I guess I'm an office hours organizer. Um, and then there's like right now for support, right? We don't have a dedicated support function. And then I just hired two support engineers and they're going to start next week. Super excited about that. And so that's another hat that we'll be owning, but it's like less defined because there's so much to tackle. And so if you were like gonna do like a follow-up episode with me like 3 months from now, then like it'll be those hats and then more hats, right? It's just like going where the business needs to go, where the product team needs to go, and then also like where our users are pulling us.
Curious, when you are speaking with a team internally, how do you bring visibility of the community impact on business? How do you talk about community wins and stuff? How do you ensure that people from other teams, like everyone who works with you, knows how community helps to move your, like to grow your product?
Um, so I guess like the also a hard question. Um, these are hard questions because they're really like broad. You know what I mean? They're kind of like end resulty kinds of questions, which I mean, they're important. Everybody has these and they're top of mind. But they're also like, there is such a journey to get there. Um, I'd say like for Zed, it's kind of more clear because the feedback loop is so tight and like we need more open source control. Okay, great. Now we have more, and they're grabbing a lot of issues off of the Git board. Fantastic. Like, what does it look like if, like, what is our, like, in-person demand look like? Okay, we're going to launch some meetups and like start seeing is there an in-person demand? Oh, there is. So now, like, now that we know that there is some in-person demand, like, do people sign up and do they actually show up? And like, are they Zed users? Like, those are the questions that I kind of have in my mind. Now I get to play with different kinds of formats. Like you can do a meetup and have speakers, and it's, anyone can do that. Like, can you get the right people to show up? Can you get enough of the right people to show up? And then if you do, what do you want to do with that audience? Like, we're thinking a lot about the next evolution of meetups now is going to be like probably a lot more collaborative, a lot more hands-on, and a lot more engaged because ultimately we want Zed users to one be more and more excited about Zed in general, like outside of the product and in the product. Like there's a whole experience, right, that community delivers. And then secondly, like, and maybe that's the primary thing is just learn something new that they're excited about and gets them better at their job. And like, you can test that in a bunch of different formats in meetups. So that's like, so the original question, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent. The original question is like, how do I show impact to the company? Those are probably the two things right now is that it's like, what does the demand look like from users? And like, can we get more contributors working on high impact things? For Amplitude, it's a bigger company, more like way more established, very much a SaaS model, very top down in terms of growth, right? Like Zed and most dev tools are probably a lot more on the bottoms up side. So Amplitude is much more top down. And like, so it's like really sales led, right? Like that's just the nature of top down, like growth strategies. And like, we were thinking more about product adoption because like, what are the things that you can influence at your company? And if you have like a strong marketing and brand team that's already like covering like all of the new user acquisition and like top of the funnel stuff and like getting people into the product or like getting them over to sales, like that's thankfully not a community goal. This would be a terrible one to generate leads. And then like we thought about like where can we most directly intersect with like what our user needs and what the product might not be delivering. And like that was a lot of focus on new users. And then when you focus on new users and like try to influence things like, is there, week over week usage? Is there an increase of week over usage? Like I used Amplitude a lot to measure like our community impact. So when you look at a cohort of community members that are new on their journey, do you see like any kind of interesting difference with the cohort of new users who are not community members? And then from there, you drill down, like, what did they do? Did they go to like a beginner office hours or did they go to like one of our crash courses? Like, is there an interesting impact with these different programs? And so the most important thing when you're doing like community analysis for business and ROI in general is like one, like work backwards, right? Like always work backwards from your problems. Like revenue is the most lagging thing, but like what's the thing? Is it like consistent week over week usage for a certain period of time for new users? And then continue to work backwards from there and do some like cohorting. And I think I really enjoyed that on the Amplitude side. The reason why I talk less about it now is because I work on a dev tool. And if you're going to track and cohort users for a dev tool, like you might as well just burn every bridge that you have because like this is terrible. You can't be like, I'm tracking your usage in our product to see if community made an impact, like for the business. Like talk about breaking trust. There's no way I'm going to do that. So it's a very, very different way of like segmenting your audience and reaching your audience based on like, who they are and what they're comfortable with and how you use their data. But with Amplitude, people didn't care. And I cohorted like crazy. And I looked at like their usage and what features they were using and how new they were in their journey. And we segmented a lot and we did a lot of like very specific communication based on the cohort that you're in and like playing with messaging and then also event types and like the types of like for example if you're an Amplitude user and you got an invite for our custom formulas office hours, like not every Amplitude user got an invite for our custom formulas office hours. It's because you already use it or you show a propensity for using it because you're using adjacent features. And we want that group to come to an event that is super, super relevant for what they want to do or are already doing and be able to learn more. And then from
Mhm.
there, where like more of those things will turn into an interesting cohort of like users that are coming back or increasing their usage or using other parts of the product that they didn't before joining our community programs.
I mean, I would say that it's always like positive and negative effects of tracking, like if user and how they are using the product, because you can like you use it for negative to kind of like try to extra sell them something they don't need, and then you can also use it in a positive way when you are like seeing what they are using, how they're using, like how to make their life even better, like what can we do to improve. And I feel like it's also must be helpful. So it's always like a bright side and a dark side, and it's always like this human
No,
question
I mean
whether I should do it or not. And still,
I'm all for it. Like track. I think track it
yeah,
all.
please.
And like I just think like if you the way you're using it, it matters, right? Like if you're like for Amplitude, like we were tracking and then we were not anonymizing it. We were using those to send like targeted communication. And like the users were comfortable with that. But like with Zed, it's totally anonymized, right? Like if I connect that back to a specific user and send them an email based on what they did in the product, like this is the most horrible way to reach a developer. So like I'm not going to do that. I'm not even going to come close to that. So like if the product team is using tracking for insights, fantastic. They should be. If they're not, then they're not doing their job. But if you're like using those insights to target somebody who doesn't want their identity to be revealed, then like don't do it, right? Like you've crossed the line.
You know, Esther, I wish to have the sky as a limit, but time is a limit to our conversation. So the final question, if you were where you are right now, and I don't know, like Esther, you 2 years ago came to you and asked, hey, what should I do to identify my community ROI? So what would you say to yourself back then?
So I would say like if you're like a founder and you're like, I think we need a community, everyone's doing community, seems super cool, then I would say don't talk about community ROI yet. And then just find out if you need a community, talk to your users who are going to be your core base and your product is a differentiator in that community. So like you have to talk to your core users as like the main audience that would adopt a community product and learn what their needs are and is community the right tool to solve their problems. So that's like you're a founder, you want a community because it's trendy. Like ask yourself, do your users even want a community? And then on the flip side, you're a founder and you're like, I hired this community person, Esther at Zed, and I don't know why we pay her so much. And I don't know why we're spending so much money on events and like all of the things that she wants. And like, why are we growing her team? And that's like, let's just hope that doesn't happen right now because it's only been 3 months, that said. But let's assume that conversation happens like in 9 months. So give your community team like a year, but like you have the appetite for 9 months, fine. Ask the question at 9 months, what am I getting out of this community at Zed and why am I investing in it and growing it? And like I think the questions that our founders should ask themselves, now I'm scared, but like I think the questions that our founders should ask themselves is like, one, is there an impact on brand? And that's like just hard to measure, but is there like an interesting impact on brand? Like let's figure out a way to come up with some proxy metrics and what that might look like. Two, like are we like seeing any influence on our product? And open source is one, like are they helping us build our product in a meaningful way, not just in like a good vibes way. Right now it's just good vibes. Or influence on the product could mean like improved adoption. So the next thing I'm going to start launching is like that new Zed user experience. And like, for new users who are downloading Zed and trying it out, like, are they becoming like weekly active users, daily active users? So that would be another hard question that we should be looking at. There's overall just like community retention. Like you have filled this Discord server or filled our email list with people, but are they coming back and are they starting to volunteer and do more for us? Because you want Zed to be, or your community to be a force multiplier. So if you're really interested in brand metrics, then you should see more volunteers coming out of the community doing more brandy things like running meetups and writing things for you. And then other things that I would say, Zed specifically, is our community members filling in the gaps that our team cannot do because we're so lean? Are they contributing in other ways outside of code, like documentation or demo videos, and really giving back to their users that way? So product influence, really being a resource for the team as well, like any kind of brand and marketing kind of things, but not in a lead gen way. Those are the types of metrics that I would think about if I were a founder coming to me like 9 months in my job and being like, why do you have your job still? And do we really need a community? And then I think like really agreeing on what those metrics are and defining those in a measurable way is important. But I would expect them to ask me those things a few months from now, 6 months from now at earliest, ideally, not any sooner, please. But those are the kinds of things that are top of mind for me in terms of like, should this community exist or not?
You know, when I hear you, I feel like if they won't ask you, you will come to them and tell them like, hey,
Well,
here are
now
the
I'm going
questions
to
here.
like now that I'm gonna like look back and be like, oh shit, I better be ready. So
And
I'm gonna start prepping for it now.
last but not least, name two people I should reach out to talk about community ROI.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was thinking about this a lot. And like I really like the HubSpot community guy. I don't know him that well, so but Evan Hamilton, I think he writes really thoughtful content about like the inner workings of community, but then also like zooming out, not necessarily ROI, in a revenue sort of way, but just like what's HubSpot really getting out of it? What are the users getting out of it? So I think he's really great. And then so at Spendesk, it's a fintech company. There's a community person that built like an adjacent, separate branded community. It's all called like I think it's called CFO Connect. His name is Luke Hancock,
Hmm.
and he's been such a strong person in my mind from the beginning. Like I've done community work for like maybe 3 years now, not long at all. I'm a growth marketer, and like just the way he builds is so consistent and so thoughtful, and like he takes such risks by being so conservative because he's not like I'm going to build the a fintech community for the world. He's really sure about who his audience is and why, and I can imagine he has gone to battle with random people in the company who have no idea what a community is, and they're like, why can't it be 1 million people next year? And he's probably like, here's why all of those people, like 909, 90,000 of them don't matter, and this 10,000 do.
Got it. Got it. And what is the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is best. Or yeah, LinkedIn is best.
Super easy, super easy. Esther, thank you so much for this conversation, for bringing such topics as why behind the community and also like dealing with this incentive and badges that sometimes looks like just food for dogs or some
Sorry,
stuff. And
guys.
also
Yeah.
talking about like life parts, because once again, every time that you are thinking about your community members, as you've said, it's always competing with something they can do instead of like being the community. And also for sharing up some questions that your management might ask you in very, very soon. Or maybe you will go and tell them,
Thanks so
hey,
much.
why didn't you ask me those questions? And yeah, I'm super happy that we had this conversation. So thank you so much for sharing such an open and honest experience.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the chance to do this.
And yeah, see you in the community world. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions about how the community can help you reach and overcome your business goals faster, let's connect on LinkedIn and talk about it. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.